Hey, deserving listeners, The Ultimatum on Netflix. Let's watch.
What's up, Carter?
As you can see, Carter is very comfortable.
Our dogs have the exact same, what we call whoobies. I don't know if that's what they call them, but my dogs, particularly my little dog, if you see my pictures on Instagram, loves those whoobies. Just if she could play with that toy all day long, that's what she'd want to do. And every morning, that's what I do with them. The problem is, though, the big dog wants to play as well. And the big dog is very clumsy. And so when I throw the whoopee, the little dog kind of gets scared. It's like, oh my God, this monster is just, trampling down the hallway. And so I have to separate them and play whoopee with either dog in different rooms.
Just doing his own thing.
At the changeover, it was really hard to just sit there and listen to Madeline and Randall's kind of chemistry, whatever the fuck. Like, hearing that was just, ugh.
Yeah, I think that'd be hard for anyone. Again, I would hope she would have said, and she did say that, I don't think I showed that clip, at that dinner table. She's like, I was the one who signed up for this. I was the one who got him to come on the show. And this has been hard for me. So I think she later on, because I've been talking about how I've been wondering, it's like, Shanique, you were the one that dragged him on the show, or at least suggested he come on the show. And now you're angry at him for participating in the show, seemingly. I understand you feel hurt. I understand you feel jealous. I understand you're worried you're going to lose Randall. It makes total sense. But it's like you're yelling at him or blaming him for something that you set up. It was your decision to do this. And so I think in the latter days and weeks, she is now in this place where she's like, that was hard. It was my choice to do this, but that was hard. And the way she talks, I have a feeling like it really festers inside of her, really plagues her. And it could be mildly relationally traumatic to see the love of your life, the person you want to marry, talking with another woman about how they connected and smiling together and just wondering what they did together. That'd be rough. And so that's why I would not recommend people go on the show. Even if you think things are going to go well, it might not. It could completely ruin, like, let's just say Shanique and Randall were on the road to a long-term relationship, but Randall was just taking it a little slower. And in another universe, they don't come on the show and they eventually get married and they live happily ever after. There's a possibility that because of coming on the show, she has now had images and intrusions on her trust of Randall that will plague her and cause like a fly in the ointment, as a result, not being able to trust him and needing to break up with him because of that. So I'm sure none of y'all will be in this position, but I just hope people really are careful about going on this show.
I gave Randall the ultimatum, and
I was partly prepared for the fact that, like, no matter what experience Randall has, like, the dynamic of our relationship is never going to be the same. The fact that he did have a great experience does add like another layer to like the shit that we have to figure out.
Right. I think she's saying we already had stuff that we were dealing with, and now we have yet another thing that is going to plague us. I think that's what she's saying.
Now that Madeline has done her part, thank you very much. Don't come again.
You said a lot tonight. You were very expressive.
you were sharing a lot of your experience and the possibilities of.
We've seen a lot of Shanique and Randall and Ray and Zay. Ray and Shanique are, I think, experiencing similar emotions. That, we talked about how they both expressed jealousy about their long-term partners being sexually aroused while they were with the other people. And I contrasted the two different reactions. We saw Shanique's reaction, which caused a lot of conflict between her and Randall, and we saw Ray's reaction, which communicated her feelings and for the most part went well, and they seemed to be able to move forward from that. My hypothesis is that Shanique has been through a lot more relational traumas than Ray has. Ray seems to exhibit a personality type that in all likelihood she was attuned to fairly well growing up, because she seems to trust and is able to be vulnerable and able to see through the process. You know, she felt the Ray felt the jealousy, she felt the hurt, she communicated it, but at the same time, even though Zay didn't really respond that well, she basically still trusted him and was willing to believe that he is a safe person to love and be with, which I think he is. So for Shanique now, we're seeing that she is starting to go down a road of exploring. You and Madeline were really talking a lot about how you connected. So I'm guessing, of course, and in the one-on-one interview, she talks about, I think, that she's expressing hurt and worry, that I'm hurt that he connected with someone else. I worry that he's not the right one for me. I worry that he's going to leave me. I worry that he'll meet another Madeline, or maybe even Madeline, and he will cheat on me, or he's always going to be thinking about Madeline or someone else and not me. Those are all totally rational feelings, in the same way that it would be rational to be jealous of sexual arousal in your partner for someone else. And how do you navigate it, though? The feelings, the foundation, is rational, normal, human. Not everyone has those reactions, but if you do, normal. How do we communicate it? If you come from a foundation of trust in the other person, meaning that you trust the other person cares and will take care of you, that will promote a different way of communicating. You'll be more vulnerable, you'll be more slow, you'll be less triggered. Whereas if you don't trust, if you're coming at it with the assumption that the other person does not care or won't care, or you're not worthy of care, then you will come across pre-angry, pre-hurt, pre-hostile. So let's see what happens here.
What could be? I guess I never really heard you talk about like your future that much. You went all in, and you know, whether or not like that includes me, like okay.
I think she's doing pretty well compared to the past. You have to read between the lines in terms of what she's saying. If she were more direct, I think she would say, I was hurt by what you said. I'm okay with it because that's the whole purpose of the show, and I'm the one that dragged you on the show. But I just have to say, I'm wondering, do you love me? Do you want to be with me? Do you care? Where am I in your life? Now that you've been with Madeline, who am I to you? Okay, but that would be much more vulnerable, right? And scary, particularly if you've been through experiences that have shown you that you can't trust other people. But she did a pretty good job. I'll rewind it, but it'd be pretty easy for Randall to see what she's saying between the lines, which is essentially that. And so hopefully he can see that instead of responding literally to the verbatim of what she said, which I don't think will really address what she's trying to get at. But let's rewind.
You were sharing a lot of your experience and the possibilities of what could be. I guess I never really heard you talk about like your future that much.
Right. So she's saying, I never heard you talk about your future that much. If you just take that verbatim, you're like, oh, interesting. You're just saying a statement. Okay. But there's a question in there, right? The question is, am I in your future? It seemed like you were talking about your future with Madeline. Have you ever thought about me in your future? Or I've never heard you talk about your future with me in that way, or I've never felt that. And so that makes me feel like, it makes me feel hurt that I saw you talking about that with someone else. That I'm guessing that's what she's trying to say, but she's just saying a statement. And we can use this as a jumping off point. One of the things that you can do, if you can handle it, is to record your conversations with your partner and listen back and actually really evaluate the exact wording that you're using. When people do that, if you really, especially if you listen to it like a week later, it's stark how much you are not really communicating what you really mean. If you just really listen to the words you're using, it'll be stuff like this. It'll be just statements like, oh, interesting. I never saw you talk about the future so much. And you'll listen to yourself and you're like, that's not really what I meant. Why did I say that? I should have said, am I in your future? That would have been a much more direct statement.
Wasn't able to translate that to you in 2.5 years. But
Okay, well, you had to add the 2.5 years
I was just
part.
saying, like, I feel like you enjoyed it a lot. But I'm not even gonna focus on the negative stuff that I felt tonight. I want to make sure I'm focusing on us in these 3 weeks.
Randall is reacting in a way that he's listening with his body language. If I were there, I would encourage Randall to compassionately address, or at least reflect what he's hearing from her. Because I get the impression that Shanique is being very careful, which is good, because I think she knows that if she isn't careful, it's going to cause a problem in their relationship. And so I think she's trying to be nice. She's trying to watch her tone. And so she's coming across in a different mode than we've seen before. And so, yeah, I would encourage Randall because he's not really saying much. He's just kind of, oh, okay. Instead of saying, oh, well, da-da-da-da, like, here, let me tell you. Or now maybe Randall doesn't want to be with her anymore. But if he does, he probably should speak up. I guess either way.
But like, obviously, because we both just left from like another relationship, it's like we're gonna have a lot of questions and naturally make a lot of comparisons. And I think I'm a little like nervous about what that might be like for us,
Okay, good. Shanique is doing a great job being vulnerable. She has a very warm tone, vulnerable tone. Now, Shanique has said some interesting things about him in passing, that he lacks confidence or something along those lines. I think she even said, I hope that this process would make him into a man, which, whenever I hear stuff like that, I'm like, what does that mean? But I think what she might be saying is that when they get into conversations like this, he doesn't say much, and that's interpreted as he doesn't have confidence. And that frustrates her because he's not very communicative. He doesn't offer much. And I would suspect, if that's true, which I don't really know, I guess we might see some, and we've already seen a little bit of signs of that even up until this point in this conversation. If that were true, I'm guessing it's because he doesn't trust that even saying what's on his mind is going to be received well, not necessarily by Shanique, but really maybe anyone in his life going back to when he was a kid. So, or when he gets pushed, then he starts to get defensive and he starts to be insulting, like we saw in a previous fight that they were in. So maybe Randall has those two modes where he's either quiet and frustrating to others, or he's insulting to others, instead of a third option, which is differentiated listening assertiveness.
What do you want me to do better?
Don't think dumping all these things that I think I need you to work on right now is just appropriate right now.
This conversation, it's just interesting to contrast this with the Ray and Zay conversation, because their conversation was much more warm, much more intimate, much more easygoing, I guess. There's a lot of tension here, and Shanique is, I think, really trying to speak with a good tone, and she's saying, okay, what do you think I need to work on? And again, I don't know, but given where they're at, because this is their first night together again, I think where Shanique is do you love me? Do I love you? Where are we right now? I think that's where she's at. Or I'm hurt about what happened. Do you want to be with Madeline? Because there's a part of me that wonders if you... But instead of that, she is speaking kind of around that, and then she says, what do you want me to do differently? And I think that's her very indirect way of saying, will you love me, please? And if not, what do I need to do to change so that you'll love me and make me feel secure? I think that's where she's coming from. I don't know. Maybe she's just coming from a very differentiated place, a very purposeful place of, let's talk about our complaints about each other. And I'm open, I'm open to hearing about whatever kind of complaints you have. I don't know. It doesn't come across that way, but I don't know. And then he says, that's not appropriate right now. So it just completely shuts it down. The way that they communicate is just so different than what we saw Ray and Zay. And I'm comparing them to Ray and Zay because those are the only two couples that we've really seen have these kind of conversations up until this point. Maybe other couples we'll see as well. But there's so many other things that Randall could have said, and maybe he will, but he could have said, oh, okay, well, thank you for asking for that. That's a really great thing. I think we should both do that. I'd love to hear what you think I should change, but yeah, I got some things to say that I'd love you to change. But I don't want to talk about that right now, but we'll definitely get into that. And it just warms my heart that you asked that. But I just want to have a good time, or I just want to bond with you. I don't want to get into a fight. I feel like that could get kind of hairy. So, he could have said that or some other thing. Instead, he's just like, that's inappropriate. Let's rewind that.
Don't think dumping all these things that I think I need to work on right now is just appropriate right now.
I get it. I'm just happy to just have you back.
Are you really happy?
There's so much stuntedness to the communication. It's hard to watch. As a couples therapist, I want to be there and go like, no. Let's encourage this part of you to come out, not that part. Or what are you saying by that? She's going into vulnerability and being extremely functional. She's just like, I'm just glad to have you back. I think that's one of the most honest things she's ever said on this show. I'm just glad to have you back, which I was suspecting what was going on this whole time, that she didn't want to lose him. She loves him. She doesn't want him to be with anyone else. It's hard for her to watch him be with other people. And it was a wonderful opportunity to say, and I'm glad to have you back. Let's hug. Instead, he uses it as an opportunity to criticize her, attack her. She's being vulnerable. And he's like, do you? Like, what I would say to him in that moment is like, okay, we'll get to that. If you have a question about what her feelings are, great. But she was just very vulnerable. And if you want her to be vulnerable and you want her to feel safe with you, how about you say something else in that situation? How about you say something that addresses her vulnerability? And hopefully he would say something like, oh, well, Shanique, yeah, I'm glad to have you back too. And it makes me feel good that you want me back. Now, in couples therapy, it's not that easy. I can literally talk about those kinds of changes in communication for years before I see a change. It's very hard for some people who have had a lot of relational traumas to switch a paradigm in their head. They're almost always coming from a place of suspicion and trauma, and I think both of them come from those places. So when she's vulnerable, what can happen to people is if they go through a lot of betrayal and a lot of rejection and a lot of strife relationally in the past, when finally someone is vulnerable with them, it causes them to have this initial reaction of, oh, good. So an hypothesis I would have with Randall is that she was vulnerable and coming at him in a very warm way, and that provoked a knee-jerk reaction in him of like, oh, thank you. But very quickly after that is a noticing of you're being vulnerable, and that almost always results in you being hurt. So halt, brakes, there's an accelerator of, yay, she loves me, accelerate, and then immediately a brake at the same time of, hey, the two minds, if you will, like, yay, and no, this is a scary situation. And what comes out of him is, are you in love with me? Or are you happy to have me back? Let's rewatch that.
Yeah. I'm just happy to just have you back.
Are you really happy?
All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself and take care of others, because we all deserve it. We really, really do.